Hi, welcome back to the podcast School of Love, where we want to help you create parent-child relationships where you can talk about anything, especially about sex. And sometimes these conversations need to be about tech, right? In this episode, I get to interview Chris McKenna, founder of Protect Young Eyes, which is an organization all about protecting kids online. I really recommend their website. Protect Young Eyes has lots of useful resources for parents. You know, all these loads of apps and you just don't know, is it good? Is it bad? What do we need to watch out for? They have really good overviews about each of these and also how we can really implement better parenting controls on our devices. And Chris McKenna, in this episode, he also just shares about what does it really mean to guide our kids safely through technology and how he founded this organization. So I hope this will be really insightful for you and fun to listen to. Enjoy this episode. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to School of Love. I am here today with Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes. I'm really excited to have you here, Chris.
Thank you, Amelia. I'm excited to be here. This is where technology is good. It can connect us from far away from each other still to have this conversation, right?
It's so true, yeah. Technology has its huge pros and huge cons, right?
That's right.
Can you introduce yourself and tell us about Protect Young Eyes?
Sure. I never expected to be doing this. I don't know about you. I find myself on a path that I never could have guessed. As a background, my degree is in accounting. I'm supposed to be in finance in some way. And I did that for over a decade. I loved it. It provided for us. But the Lord called me into ministry in 2009. And so I left the business world after 12 years and then went into a full-time student ministry role, where I worked with middle school students from 2009 to 2016. And if you think about sort of the evolution of technology, that's exactly when we gave kids portable media, right? That's when we started to carry. The iPhone 5 was really the one that we started to carry around the most and give to kids. And that's a kind of 2012, 2013. That's also when Snapchat and Instagram now are skyrocketing in popularity. And this is exactly when we started to let children carry 100 million choices and 100 million people in their pocket. And Amelia, that was unsettling to me. I didn't have research, I didn't have any evidence, but that felt like a bad idea. So I simply started doing research for my families at church. We attend a large non-denominational church here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and did research for my families and shared what I was learning and wanted them to be educated because they were simply handing them phones and apps and didn't really understand why. And that felt like something we needed to solve, and that led to the launching of a website. I did go after ministry, and I worked for about 7 years at a company called Covenant Eyes, which many of your listeners are maybe familiar with, an anti-pornography software company that's very popular in the church. I did digital marketing for them and ran kind of social media and everything for them for a while. But now over the past kind of year and change have been full-time at Protect Young Eyes and lead a team of presenters now that travel now even kind of around the world. I was just in Mexico City a couple of weeks ago speaking to parents and doing whatever we can to educate. We want to create community, so we have a private community of folks who can come together and ask questions and get that one-on-one support, but a ton of learning, right? We have self-directed help on our website, a lot of free information there, which I know you're familiar with. We have a course that parents can take kind of on demand if they want to go through our 5 habits of a tech-ready home. We also do, I just shared it with my team as sort of a end of year recap. We did 364 live presentations this past 12 months and really love being in schools and churches to educate when we can in person too. So that's who we are. Never expected to be doing this.
Sounds so awesome. I love how you took a personal concern or desire and you really turned it into the work that you're doing. What would you say is like your life mission in this through this work, right? I mean, it seems like it's all your passion and your work are all entangled together, right? And so what is your life mission?
Well, it goes even one step beyond passion. It is, but it wasn't always that way, meaning I was exposed to pornography as a child, like a lot of Gen X men my age, right? More of the two-dimensional versions of that, which led to a lot of really unhealthy, uneducated sort of curiosities. We didn't talk about that much, so you just sort of dealt with it, and that led to compulsive use of pornography when I was an adult, carried that into marriage, and so it almost destroyed me. Protect Young Eyes comes out of this desire to do whatever I can to prevent the world's 12 and 13-year-olds from becoming what I was, right? To prevent them from experiencing some of the things that I experienced. And I wasn't even a digital, right, native. I was struggling with these things in a more analog sense, and now we have just supercharged it, and we have made it so much more accessible. And we completely underestimated where it even lives, and giving our kids social media and giving them phones, wanting to connect and be, protective of them, and yet we have unlocked so many harms by doing that. And so that's also where, I heard a pastor say one time, it's beautiful when the Lord takes our misery and can transform that into ministry. And I feel like that's what I'm attempting to also do for this phase. I've had some wonderful careers over my lifetime. I feel like for the next 5 years, this is really what the Lord has called me to do, a bit of for such a time as this, sort of Esther sort of period of life where I feel like this is what I need to be doing. And it's interesting you asked that question, coincidence, not really, but I was just kind of documenting this week for Protect Young Eyes as a company, some new and fresh words around mission and vision. And this is what I typed last night. Vision, what is the ideal future? I'm just going to read this off the screen. It says, a world where every child navigates technology with confidence, safety, and purpose, supported by informed caregivers and responsible digital ecosystems. That has a lot packed into it, and it's a big, lofty idea, but it's a world that I would hope could be reality at some point. So
yeah, that's what we all want. A lot of us parents don't really know. I mean, that's probably why you're doing so many lives, right? Because so many parents don't know that it's not so safe with all of this internet access. Do you have a recommended age where you should start talking to your kids about internet safety and pornography?
Well, if they have access to a home that has access to things connected to the internet, then they need access to information to use it. So that's going to be a whole lot younger than we probably want to start these conversations. And it's not just the porn talk. I think that's sort of where our minds go to as parents. Like, oh, no, Chris, are you telling me I have to talk to my 4-year-old about pornography? Well, no. I mean, yes, but no. I'm not wanting you to expose them to information and themes that they're not ready for. But does your 4-year-old know what to do when they see something they don't understand? Do they know what to do that when they do that thing, they're not going to get in trouble because you've practiced what that looks like? Do they know because of where they are developmentally that you haven't just told them what to do, but you've actually practiced these things? Because when you understand the development of children, you understand that they don't think abstractly. They need concrete examples. So you actually put a tablet in their hands, or you put a Chromebook in their hands, or you put a Kindle in their hands and say, I want you to pretend that there's something that is scary that you saw, and you go, I don't understand that. Whoa. And that little funny feeling in your belly is telling you it's not quite right. I call that Holy Spirit radar. Something's not quite right that's going on there. And whenever that happens, I want you to listen to that. That's a feeling I want you to pay attention to. And when that happens, here's what I want you to do. And as a parent, you go up into your bedroom and you close the door and you make them take that thing, walk up the steps and knock on the door and say, Mom, Dad, I saw something that kind of gave me that funny feeling. And you as a parent practice smiling and having an open face and being calm when they do that, because you've practiced these things, right? These are the things that I think as a parent, that's not teaching your kids about pornography, but it is. Like, you think to yourself, well, I didn't say the word. No, you just created a way for your child to bring you something online that is bothering them, that's shocking to them, that's not good for them. Excellent. That's going to pave the way for more conversations that are going to be building on each other sort of over time. And so, yeah, you better believe we need to be starting these conversations. If they're ready to go to school, they are ready for these conversations, because now they're interacting with kids who have all kinds of different ideas and all kinds of different instructions from parents as to what is and isn't appropriate. And my wife, we just had lunch today together, and she was telling me about, a situation where she was talking to a teacher at school, and they were in a meeting with parents, and the parent was talking about problems they were having at home, and they casually just kind of mentioned, yeah, I'm kind of mad at my kindergartner. I think I'm going to take his phone away. And they were like, wait, your kindergartner has a phone? Like, this is what our kids are going to run into. So the risk is almost never that we have the conversations too early. Almost never. And that's what I want us to remember.
I've seen some of your short videos on your Instagram channel, and I really love how you give the actions to the parents and the child, the sort of role play. I actually tried some myself with my kids.
Good.
And it's so cool to just think, like, okay, now we know what to do if this happens. And practicing on both sides, like you said, the child practices, but then also us parents, it's also good practice for us, because I think it's easy to react on shock, right? Like if we notice like our kids have seen something, to not swallow that shock down and just be like, what did you do, or something. Whereas we really need to practice, like you said, like this welcoming, like, oh, thanks for telling me that. Thanks for coming to me. I think that's so important. My daughter recently came across something. She accidentally clicked. And then she did tell me about it. And then my first reaction was really like, why did you click that? But then luckily I reminded myself, thank you for telling me. You did a good job. So it just, for sure, like we said, it takes practice. It
does. And us, I think, we underestimate the power of our response. We teach parents about kids' brains, right? Kids, and all of us humans, we have three functional areas of our brain. If we talk about them in kind of three big buckets, there's a part that is helping us survive, a part that's helping us feel and process stress and emotion, and there's a part that helps us think logically. And when a child, right, is kind of going through different phases, those first two parts are really what's most active. Logical thinking and connecting actions to outcomes and consequences, if you're a parent, isn't always present. That develops a little bit later. So what's important about that is it's understanding that kids, especially during adolescence and their teenage years, have very high social and reward sensitivity. So social media is going to create a lot of vulnerabilities for them because it preys on those sort of attributes of young people. But as parents, we also have to remember that even though we have a frontal cortex that has a lot more maturity and is plugged in, is hopefully governing our behavior a little bit more at 40 than it was at 14, we are still emotional beings, and the limbic system in a human always fires first. It fires fast because it's that fight, flight, or freeze response that it wants us to respond quickly to some perceived threat. Whether you believed we kind of changed that way over time or we were created that way to survive, which the latter is what I believe, that's just the way we are. And so our emotions are going to govern our reactions first. That's why as parents, we have to practice not responding with emotion. We have to practice that out of us so that we default to the logical, the calm, the breath, the pause before we respond. It's like when you get that emotional email from somebody at work, whatever it is, and you're like, no, don't respond, or put it in drafts for a day. And then you read it the day after and you go, oh, I am so glad I didn't send that email with those words and that tone, because that would have gotten me in trouble. At the time, it felt good and logical, but that's because you were seeing it through the lens of limbic. And when you see it through the lens of prefrontal cortex, you see it more clearly. So as parents, I think that's important for us, that we respond through the thought and the love and the logic and the calm, but that's not natural. So we have to practice that.
Totally, yeah. Like I have 4 kids. I think I kind of started to learn that with the third one, to not react emotionally. It really took some time and realizations to really get there, and still practicing.
Still practicing. I have 4 myself, so I get it.
Yeah. So I also come from a life of faith, and I work with this organization called School of Love, and we really want to encourage families to talk to their kids about sexuality. And what I feel is also important is that we first try to make a good impression of this topic, like we say it's a gift from God and we need to be careful with it. It's for a married couple, for grown-ups. And then eventually also go into the topic of pornography, or just like you said, not necessarily telling my young child specifically the word, because of course that doesn't make them understand it, but to, give them the tools and understanding of what to watch out for. So I heard this interesting ratio once, which I thought was maybe a good way to approach this, which was kind of like a 3-to-1 ratio, where you try to give like 3 times as much good information around this topic of sexuality compared to the warnings that you're giving your children.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, that repetition, it's impossible, I think. So, through that lens of faith, I sometimes use the story from the Bible from Deuteronomy 6:5-9, the Shema, verses that our Jewish brothers and sisters still take very seriously, where God gives Moses the instructions for teaching children about God. And to be honest, they're not that complicated. God just says, well, you want them to learn about me? Then talk about me when you walk, talk about me when you're at home, talk about me when you lie down, talk about me when you get up, tie me around your arms, bind me on your forehead, stuff me in the doorposts of your houses and your gates, right? So essentially, my interpretation is God is saying, you want your kids to learn important things, in this case about me, then be a divine algorithm. Do it over and over and over again, right? And so as parents, that's a reminder for us. Whatever the topic is, whether it's healthy sexuality, healthy approaches to technology, healthy approaches to relationships, whatever it is, are we saying those things more often than the algorithms that we have so willingly placed in their lives and the messages that are coming from those things? Because, again, through a biblical lens, there's really nothing new under the sun, Amelia. Everything's been tried and done, and I feel like all social media has done, all YouTube has done, is they're just applying biblical principles to capture our hearts for their things, right? Do it over and over and over and over again. Prick at that part of their brain that has a dopamine reward system, right? That feels good, and you'll get their time and attention, whether they're 4, 14, or 40. And that's the model that they've built. And you know what? It works. So we've got to press against that as parents. One of the things I joke about is if your kids aren't rolling their eyes and finishing your sentences and annoyed, then you haven't said it enough.
I see. That's the goal.
That's the goal. I want them a little bit annoyed. And then you know you're in the right spot. Then you know you've said it enough.
Yeah. I love that, Chris, how you also just the idea of an algorithm, the divine algorithm, and then also kind of tuning like this God message to my kid's algorithm, like if my kid is maybe really interested into Lego or, I don't know, turtles or something, but bringing God into that or, bringing whatever message into that. So it's like really attuned to my child. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. Good.
Yeah. So, like a lot of your advice on the website, which I love, by the way, it's like really thorough. I guess you guys have a big team that's like testing all these apps and all this tech because it's really detailed.
Yeah, thank you. People will be listening to this at a different time than obviously we're recording it here in December when we're having this conversation, Amelia. But that website is just 3 weeks old. We've been working for the past 6 months to completely rebuild it, completely rewrite it, completely do everything from the bottom up. So I'm glad you find it to be helpful. And yeah, I've got a guy who every Monday I give him kind of a list of tasks and things to keep up to date and to go, and we have different places we visit to make sure that we keep everything updated, and that's an important part of our process. We want it to be sort of a one-stop shop instead of saying, we'll go to Apple for this and go to Android for this and go to this for another thing, kind of a clearinghouse, if that term makes sense, for being a spot to begin that we hope is really user-friendly. That's what we want. So
yeah, respect. You guys did a really good job. I'm surprised it's only 3 months old. Or did you say 3 months, 3 weeks?
It's 3 weeks old. We've been working on it for the past 6 months, I've got things to tweak on it, but we're trying to make it better all the time. So
yeah, great. Wow. Because I love how you have descriptions for each app and then also advice on how to be careful with for each app, and age-friendly tech, right, for each age group. So yeah, really recommend it to anybody who really needs that kind of guidance.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
Yes. So yeah, about this parental control, right? So I'm totally up for it, but what would you say, like, how do you foster trust in this dynamic? You know, not that, like some parents, you know, they might feel like, oh, I'm looking over my kid's shoulder all the time and I'm overbearing, or, I mean, of course, everyone has a different way to approach it, but how can we have our parental controls, but still keep up a trusting relationship?
Sure. Well, I am a big fan of saying all the things that you're afraid will break trust. Just put it out in the light. So the idea that my kid will be upset or not like it if I put boundaries in place, I think a lot of that has to do with our own insecurities as a parent. And this is what I mean. To be honest, when it comes to children actually crave boundaries. They do. They are drawn. There's all kinds of research around this, right? The old playground study that had a playground with children that had no fence around it. And the children congregated around the apparatuses, the swing sets and the other things that were there because they didn't know where they could and couldn't be. So they stayed close to the things they could play on. But then what the school did was they built a fence a little ways out. And then what happened was all the kids moved away from those apparatuses and then got closer and played out in the open space close to the fence because they knew where their boundaries were. And that created a sense of calm for them, right? So they're actually drawn to this. From the very, very beginning, every digital device in the house doesn't belong to the child. Parent-led ownership. So you have a right to check it. Why? Because it's yours. And it's yours from the very beginning. And you communicate that very openly because that's what we do with things that have risk. That's what we do with things that could cause harm to you, my amazing son or daughter. What kind of parent would I be if I didn't check this? It's not because I think you're doing horrible things. It's because I put something in your pocket that increased the risk that somebody horrible could do something horrible to you. What kind of parent would I be if I didn't check to make sure that they aren't there hurting you? That's why we check. So it's less emphasis on the control part of that. The phrase parental control, to me, is just a horrible phrase because I think it communicates the wrong thing. It's parental involvement. It's a parental tool. It's parental monitoring. It's a sense of love and guardrails for our children when we have given them access to 100 million humans, right? And so I think our words, our mindset, our confidence, our curiosity, our openness, all of these things and how we frame this conversation dictate whether or not we maintain trust while still having radical involvement in the things that they're doing online. So that's how I think we can do that. Is it perfect? No. Are they still going to not like it? Well, yes. They're 15. You didn't want your parents in your business either. That's just normal. And that to me is a sign that you're actually kind of in the right spot, right? So I want us to be okay with some of that pushback because the stakes are too hard. I mean, the risks of harm with these digital spaces is so much different than the risks that we were presented as children, which were more physical in nature, things I could physically do to get into trouble, right, by crashing the car or right? It's so different. And we've traded those things for a lot of micro traumas and sort of micro incidents with the content that we see. And so it sort of falls under the radar here. And I would say that over time, those add up to something much bigger than the risk that, we experienced when we were children. So we have to be involved. It's not negotiable. Like we need to be confident in that as parents. It is non-negotiable, amazing child of mine, for me to be involved. That's just what comes with this because I love you.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's awesome. What can parents do if they didn't make the start like that? If they didn't say, look, this is our phone, or this is my phone that you get to use. What if we said, this is yours? But now we realize, maybe it would be better if we have this co-ownership, like you said. Do you have any advice for those kind of situations?
Well, everything everything you will try, understand that it will be difficult. And that's something I want to put out in the light in front of our kid. You look at them and say, gosh, if a pilot is flying the wrong direction with a plane full of passengers, they always turn around and go the right direction because that's the right thing to do for the passengers. And son of mine, child of mine, I've figured out through some learning and through some education that I have been flying this digital plane in our family in the wrong direction. And so for your well-being, for our well-being, for the future version of you, for your brain, for your goodness and holiness and relationships, I've got to change course here. And I want you to come with me. I want to explain what this looks like. I want you to tell me the things that you don't like. We'll work on this together, but we have to change course because I think you'll look back as a parent someday and go, well, my mom's a horrible parent. They didn't change course when they knew it, right? You would think that. And I want us to be confident in that decision by just putting those things kind of way out, just in the light, explain it, tell them the things that you want to do, listen to their concerns, but be firm. And I think that's our right as a parent. That's our job as a parent. But you do it with love. It isn't this kind of crushing force of my way or the highway. I think we need to strive for agency and their ownership wherever we can, but that's not a requirement. So we strive to look for places where they could be involved, where they could have a say, where they could have a choice in something, right? And do that whenever we can. But at the end of the day, we still have a destination that we're getting to, and we want them to come along with us. So these are things I want to say out loud to kids as often as possible, especially the older they are. If they're young, I don't think we have to work so hard to involve them. And I'll say, be the parent, make some hard choices. Will they scream and cry and hate you for a little while? Probably. That's okay. And I want us to remember in that moment that this is not them being mad at you as much as it is their brain being mad at the technology, right? That they want that. That's the way it's designed, is for them to want that and to be drawn into that. And that will go away over time if we insert into their lives. This isn't just to remove and let them just suffer. We have to replace with other experiences. We have to replace with other engagement. We have to replace with other involvement. We have to replace with other activities so that we can feed that part of the brain in other ways. And I think over time, you will see a different version of your child. It will take some time and it will be painful, but you will get to the other side.
Yeah, I believe that too. I notice with my son when he's asking to use a screen, it's like a combination of boredom, but then also needing to connect with somebody, He needs someone.
Yes.
And yeah, it's really just this crave for connection, And so sometimes it's not easy to provide that as a parent. If you're busy, you got to do this or that. So I see how it can really be challenging for many parents. But yeah, I really echo what you say. It's definitely possible to encourage your child to go through the pain of boredom or, invite them to help you in what you're doing as well. I remind myself this is good for them to invite them to help us in our everyday tasks because that will be useful for them in the future. Yeah. And another question I have, Chris, is, a lot of parents is also something I thought this year as well. I guess just generally, before I started having conversations with my kids about pornography, I thought, my kids are too good to be interested in pornography. Do you hear that a lot? And what do you say to that?
I do. I feel it too. I want to believe, I think it's a combination of things. We want to believe as parents that we've done a good enough job that our kids wouldn't choose that. I think that's a part of it. And we do. We also want to believe the best of our little angels and that they would not choose that. And for a lot of kids, they don't. I think that that's unhealthy to just use that as an excuse. And here's the thing. Even if your child does choose to look or bumps into it, they're still your good child. And I think that's something we have to remember as parents. I remember being on a phone call with a mom whose 7-year-old son had, through an iPad that didn't have a filter, had been secretly looking at some really horrible things. And she found out about this and she was really struggling to get past it. It was this guilt, right? Moms struggle with that, right? That I've done something wrong. I failed my kid. I can't get past this. And she said when she looked at her son, she felt like he was broken, right? There was something broken. And I don't often, say things like this or kind of know where she was spiritually. And I don't even invite a lot of parents to call me. But this particular story, this mom had shared a DM with me on Instagram. And so I gave her my number and she called me. And I just felt compelled to say to her, I said, I'll just make up a name. I said, Mary, you need to remember, he's still your amazing son. And she just broke down. Like that was exactly what she needed to hear. He's not different. He may have some things to work through, but he is still her amazing son, no matter what he's looked at, no matter what he's seen. He's the victim. The technology is the evil here, and it didn't transpose itself to him. He's the victim in this. And I think that's, something that can be helpful if you find yourself in a situation where something has already happened or you've discovered that they've looked at something. I think we have to fight against our own shame and guilt, and then we have to fight against that little lying voice that's going to tell us something's wrong and, he can't get past this and he's damaged forever and whatever other lies. And I want us to remember that nothing about his goodness, his nature, the way that God made him has changed as a result of this event. That doesn't have to define your child. So
yeah, thank you for that, Chris. I feel like that's a really important message to share for all parents. All of us need to hear that. And I was going to ask you, what should parents do if they find out that their kids have been viewing pornography? And yeah, that is already saying a lot.
We have a specific resource around that. If people were to come to Protect Young Eyes and under resources and downloads, Amelia, there's this wall of like 12 different PDFs of different topics, right? What to do in certain situations. And one of them is specifically what to do when my child is seeing pornography. And that's free, and parents can download that and read that if they're interested. So,
yeah, great. Yeah, that's really great. And yeah, I think also one thing that I was thinking about is even when our kids are great, we all think our kids are great, but a lot of this pornography, they aren't viewing voluntarily. Like you said, they are the victim. And of course they can reject it, but it does, what I learned is it's just so helpful to have action steps, to know what they need to do if they ever, unfortunately, see something. Like I was just thinking about when I was a kid, the first thing that I saw, like I was just Googling, it wasn't probably Google back then. I don't know what it was. But I was looking for a song with my siblings and then something just popped up, and we were shocked. But we were like a little bit freaked out and scared, and we're like, get rid of it. Like, what would mom and dad say, And, but, we didn't do anything wrong. And that's also the same thing with our kids, often the case. I mean, of course, some do seek out pornography, but yeah, sometimes the case is that it just is there. And I think it's just so empowering if they know what they can do. And they know that we are the helpers. The parents are the helpers. We're not the judges.
Yeah, definitely. That they can land safely with us. And we say that to them over and over and over again, that they'll never be in trouble, never a bad time, never in trouble, never a bad time, never in trouble. Like those are some of the rolling their eyes, we've heard it so often sort of things that I want them to hear from us for sure. So
Yeah, it's really good to repeat those messages. Yeah. And how is it in your own family? Is this a tough thing to keep up, or
it is. Well, I mean, people would go, "Oh, yeah, Chris, he has no trouble staying up to date on things." No, I still, I struggle. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to stay motivated, but I just daily have to kind of remind myself of what's at stake, and so, but yeah, I feel some of those pressures too. But for those who follow us, and I know you've followed us on social media, I try to share what I'm learning along the way. After we had a birthday party for my son who turned 13, I shared what we experienced, this past fall, and trying to communicate to the parents what the rules were with phones as kids came to the party, and trying to keep them not using them, and how we got that partially right, but not totally right, and just, I want to make sure parents know that I'm in this with them and trying to figure it out too, because we're doing it for the first time, right? In human history, in parenting history here, trying to figure this out. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, me too. Definitely learning, and up for any kind of tips from other parents, if they've already learned something. If someone were kind of on the fence to thinking about, like, should I start this conversation or should I not? Should I take this kind of deep dive? Because staying the same, it's comfortable, but it could be that some small voice in many parents' hearts are saying, I need to do this. Like, how can we help those parents to take that step? Do you know?
So,
it does take courage.
Yeah,
right?
it does. It definitely does. So, I would just say do your own assessment, like anything that you're wondering about, right? Get your hands on some research, get your hands on a book. Maybe you read something like The Anxious Generation, which is a very popular book right now that kind of pulls together all the available research that we have right now. And then, at the end of the day, each of you listening to this or watching this, you know your children best. I'm not here to tell you how to parent your kids. I can share practical ideas, but then I need you to apply them to what works best for your children. But I can tell you that we live in a time where the chances of children running into things that we don't want them to run into is higher than when you were a child. I would rather them hear how to handle that from you than anybody else on earth, than anybody else. I want us as parents to grab a hold of that divine appointment we've been given as their mom and dad and caregivers and grandparents to jump into that. And so the stakes are, I think are high, really high right now, that inaction increases the risk to a spot where I'm just not comfortable. So don't choose to do nothing. Choose to do something and read and learn so you know how and what that something is that's best for your kids. Every child is going to intersect with technology at some point. Every child is going to have a friend who is using technology in some way. That means every child needs to be prepared for it. I make the statement when I do professional development sessions and I do trainings for teachers and principals and so forth that, in 2024, 2025, learning how to be a responsible digital disciple as a young person might be more important than math. Might be more important than language arts.
Wow.
It might be one of the most important skills that they need in order to be a thriving, productive adult human being. It's a bold statement, and I get some pushback on it, but again, the risk is that we often do nothing, and I want a bold statement like that to shock us into doing something, just to do something. And I want to start in the home.
Yeah, exactly. In the home, I think sometimes, same thing with sex education. Parents sometimes think, oh, they'll learn about that in school. but it's not enough. It's really not enough. And at home, us parents, we're present, hopefully we are present with our
Right.
kids, and they need that. And so, yeah, for me, that's also the critical tie in why parents need to be giving these messages or having these conversations with their kids.
That's right. And it's not even that they'll get it from somewhere else. They might get it from pornography, right? So, I mean, that is an unfortunate teacher of sex education. That is not the way it is in real life. That is not the version of respect and love and intimacy and care that we want our children to be modeling in the relationships that they have. And so when it comes to the specific topic that your ministry is concerned with, I think that we have a very urgent need to ensure that that is not their teacher. And the way to do that is for us to dive in to be the teacher, so that they know what the real response is. And when they see that distorted false version, they can go, no, I know what's real. I know what's good. I know what's pure and excellent and what I should have my eyes on, and that's not it.
Exactly. I think I'll be so happy when, my kids can say that. And I'm already really happy that, already kids in school in the 2nd grade and the 4th grade, they make jokes about the word sex, but I think 70% of them don't know what it is, but they're just going along and laughing with the jokes,
That's
because
right.
they don't want to be left out.
Yeah.
And my kids are sometimes asking them, like, what's funny about this? And then they'll push the
They know
question
more.
away. They'll be like, it doesn't matter. I don't know. And so I just appreciate that my kids, they know, they already have this feeling like this is an important thing. It's not a joke. And so, all of that can
Huge.
just really
Yeah,
come from these conversations from us parents.
exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I just started having these conversations this year. I'm really in the first stages of just starting this. So I think it's really, it's not taking huge steps, right? It's really just, it's possible for anyone, right? Would you also agree? It's not immense rocket science. It's just, just making a move, right? Like you said, maybe just reading a book or finding out what that something is for your family.
Little drips. We don't want them to drown in a talk, just little drips, little mentions. We sometimes talk about car time, meal time, or bedtime. Those are little opportunities, right? Where we can have them in a captive audience buckled into the car. Just say something. Just turn down the radio and tell them if they ever see anything on a tablet that's kind of weird, that they can come to you, and then keep driving. One sentence. That's it. That's all it has to be. One little drip in their life to remind them that the door of comfort with you is open. And that's what I want over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it starts. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. I just wanted to ask one more thing. How does God play a big part in this work for you? Do you bring him a lot in this journey, specifically in this area?
So it depends, right? So we have, you'll laugh, we have different versions of our presentations depending on where we are. So I have a secular version, a Protestant version, and a Catholic version, depending on kind of what audience I'm in. I'm a bit of a Jesus mutt. I sort of say that, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I came to have a life-changing experience with the Holy Spirit at a Catholic parish retreat that I went to when I was in college. Andrea, we've been married now for 25 years. She's from the Reformed Church. We went to a Methodist church for a while that now is non-denominational. So I've been sort of all along the spectrum here. And our talks very much weave in a biblical worldview when we can, but also know in some places, we can't. One of the beauties of digital safety is that no matter what your worldview is, there's certain things we agree on. When it comes to what kids should and shouldn't be seeing, or what experiences they should and shouldn't be having, and so that's a nice spot to be in. Our website is fairly agnostic. I mean, anybody can come, but if they want more direction spiritually, then we're more than happy to provide that. So,
yeah, I love that. I think it's really great to reach out to everyone, and this message is important to everyone. That definitely shouldn't divide us. Actually, this can unite us, right? Us parents loving our kids, that is
that's right.
A very common ground that we have, right?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Good. Well, this has been great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate this. I wish you so much success. I hope the vision that you shared will be true. Maybe we just have to work out the details. I really support that.
Yeah, thank you. All the best to you.
Yes, thank you. You too. Take care. Spread the word and stay connected through YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, and our newsletter, which you can subscribe to on our website, schooloflove.org. Really hope to hear from you.